All right, folks, welcome to the Customer Success Leadership Roundtable. I'm Andrew Marks, the co-founder and architect behind the Success Coaching Training Program. Thrilled to be leading this discussion on customer retention strategies. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, where we've empowered over now 30,000 students from nearly 100 countries with our globally acclaimed customer success professional development programs. Whether it's self-paced online learning or dynamic virtual boot camps, we've got a program that suits your team's unique needs. You can find all the details on our website at successcoaching.co or in the chat where Ashley just dropped some links and any coupon codes that we're offering. For newcomers, this is where real-world advice meets practicality. We invite industry experts to share their experiences, ensuring that our discussions remain grounded in the everyday challenges of customer success. Regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the size of the customers your teams deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. Now, a few housekeeping items before we get going. This webinar is recorded, and we will be posting a replay and transcript on our website early next week. We encourage active participation, so please feel free to ask questions, and you want to use that Q&A button located at the bottom of your Zoom interface. Now, questions with higher upvotes are going to receive priority during the Q&A session. So if you see a question pop up and you really want to hear the answer to that, upvote it. For our LinkedIn Live audience, you can also post your questions directly on LinkedIn, and they will be relayed to us. So we have somebody that's monitoring that. Also, to maintain a smooth discussion, please use the chat window exclusively for commentary while directing your questions to the Q&A window. And we very much thank you for your engagement. In the world of customer success, you'll find plenty of smart ideas and theories, but in this series, we're all about getting real. We're here to talk practical advice, tried and true tricks, and stories from folks who live and breathe customer success every day. And that's why we've got three absolutely fantastic panelists with us today. These are people who really know their stuff, and we can't wait to hear what they've got to say. So without any more delay, let's kick things off by having our panelists introduce themselves to y'all and tell us a bit about who they are and what they do. And we're going to get started as usual in alphabetical order with Jen.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Jen Gussman. I'm located in Davis, California, right near Andrew. I'm a single mom by choice to a 4-year-old, very active little guy. And so when people ask me if I've had a relaxing weekend, I usually say no. I started out my career in big banks, so think financial institutions, and I was basically doing customer success, but it had a different name and a little bit of a different description back then. And I remember a fun fact. I remember I went to a recruiting event. I had heard about customer success, and I thought, like, this is the career for me. Like, this is what I'm great at. And I went to a recruiting event for Salesforce. Back in the day, they were kind of the first company doing it, or the first company I had heard about. And the guy said, well, I walked up to the recruiter after the event. And I said, how do I get into this, break into this field? And he said, well, you need to go get a customer success job and come back to me when you have some experience. So that is what I did. I worked in banking, then I moved over to a SaaS company in the financial industry. And then about 3 years ago, moved to Planet. Planet is a mission-based company. We are a satellite data company. Using space to help life on Earth. I love what I do. I have an amazing team of almost 30 CSMs, some of whom are here today. So hey guys, and yeah, that's me. Should I pass it over to Lorenzo?
And you have a great boss in Mike Merritt. I've known Mike for years. As a matter of fact, I've known Mike since before we started Success Hackers. So it's got to be at least a decade.
Yeah,
known Mike. He's really solid. So awesome, Jen. Thanks for joining us and making the time. And we definitely need to talk about a Greater Sacramento meetup for customer success folks.
Do it.
Yeah. Lorenzo, you're up.
Hello, good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Serva. I'm streaming from Sydney, Australia. But perhaps, as you can tell from my accent, I wasn't born here. Came here about 15 years ago for a 1-year university and never left since. So yeah, love this place. Been in customer success for about 10 years, 15 years now. The last 4, I've been in a company called Dynatrace. Dynatrace is a cloud observability company. So we work in the B2B pure space, very tech-heavy environment. And really, we exist to make sure the software works perfectly. And that's what we do behind the scenes. So you, as an individual, might not have heard of us, but surely your IT division's for it. I manage the Asia Pacific customer success team for everywhere but Australia and India. So I look after the all ASEAN countries and Greater China region, so China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Japan. So been in customer success for in this role for about 4 years now. I'm very excited to be here. There's so much that's happening in the industry, and I really look forward to share with you all what the latest are like.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know it's, what is it, 5 o'clock in the morning for you, roughly?
Yeah, 10 past. Good morning.
Yeah, but you're also a day closer to the weekend, aren't you? It's your Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday's going to be awesome. Just wait.
Awesome. All right. Well, let us know how Thursday progresses so we can figure out how to prepare. All right. So great to have you back. Actually, Lorenzo is a repeat guest. So great to have you back. And last but certainly not least, another repeat guest. Somebody I call a friend, Maranda. Maranda, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, definitely a friend. Andrew and I have known each other, I think, knocking on probably 10 years now. Yeah. I even accepted his Facebook friend invite, if that tells you anything. So.
Exactly.
Maranda Dziekonski. So I'm the Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Operations at a company named Data Assembly. I've been here right around 8 months, own everything post-sale. Also, I own a number. I'm one of those leaders that own the renewal and have a big part of the expansion number as well. A little bit about me. I've been doing this work now for 25 years. Did the math the other day, and it was kind of jarring to me as well. So I started out very early working in a large organization, 40 billion plus a year, managing a portfolio, spent 9 years there learning really how to do account management, portfolio management, but also learned other things like how to reconcile month end, how to do ISO auditing, how to build training programs. After then, I left Michigan, moved to Silicon Valley, and I've now been a part of 9 tech startups. 4 that I've been a part of have had successful exits. A couple have failed. I've owned everything from anything that fits in the customer success bucket. I've also owned HR at multiple locations, finance, biz ops, sales, and marketing for a very short period of time. I helped build out the sales team at Lending Club. You get the idea. I am a generalist, but customer success always has my heart. So it's where I tend to continue to go back to. I feel like it's a great intersection of all of these functions. So that's a little bit about me.
You're a glutton for punishment is what you are. And you got a little sunflower there over on your shoulder.
Yeah, so this is Muggsy. He wanted to be on the webinar today. He's my little Shih Tzu who is having some allergies. So he's wearing the cone of shame, but it's a sunflower. So it makes it a little fun in the house to have a little sunflower running around. So. But
Muggsy also has his own Instagram following, doesn't he?
Yeah. We were just talking about it before this. That one of their videos got like 670,000 views. It's pretty crazy.
Look at that. Your dog is an influencer.
He's an influencer. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll post it. If anybody loves following Shih Tzus, you can actually get little insights into my world. But there
get all the shit about Shih Tzus you want.
Yes.
Well, what does he think of customer retention? That's the really critical question.
His retention numbers have been through the roof.
I bet. Awesome. Thanks, Maranda. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. So let's get going with our discussion. Customer retention is the name of the game in today's business landscape. Keeping churn rates low and customer satisfaction high is crucial for maintaining a healthy revenue stream and fostering long-term success. But let's face it, it's a constant battle that requires a strategic approach and a deep understanding of our customers' needs. That's why I'm excited to discuss this topic with y'all today. As we get started, though, I want to throw a little wrench in the works. Is it possible that we might be spreading ourselves too thin in our quest to keep every single customer happy? Could a more targeted approach to retention, focusing on our highest value customers, actually yield better results in the long run? This may be a controversial idea, but it's worth exploring. After all, not all customers are created equal, and sometimes the resources that we pour into retaining less profitable clients could be better spent on nurturing our most valuable partnerships. So let's open this discussion and challenge ourselves to think outside the box. How can we strike the right balance between broad-based retention efforts and strategic prioritization?
Yeah. I will start.
Please do.
And yes. So this is a very difficult question that many of us have been grappling with for years. It's just now, over the last couple of years, that I think it's become front and center for everyone. I'll just talk a little bit to the climate that we're in. Everybody knows it, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Prior to 2023, we were in an environment where most of us had plenty of resources. So we were able to hire a little bit more freely, invest a little bit more freely. That has shifted with the rising cost of interest rates and, VCs and PE funds kind of holding the money a little bit tighter to their belt. That has slowed. We don't have a plethora of resources. So what this means for all of us, leaders and CS folks alike, or anybody in businesses that are funded and not profitable, is we have to figure out, how do we get smarter with the money we have? And that's the question of the day, right? How do we get smarter with how we're thinking about our investments? One of the things that I have been doing for years is starting out with heavily segmenting my customers, understanding the minimum experience needed in order for someone to be successful within my service or my product, and then backing into it from there. And when I'm saying segment, I see a lot of folks make the mistake. They immediately run to ARR, so what the current investment is. But you may have somebody who has a tremendous amount of green space, and you segment on ARR, give them an experience that, matches the money they're putting in, but not the money they could bring in. That is a huge, huge, huge mistake. But that's some of my initial thoughts. Like we all have to move in this direction.
I like that, and we talked about that during the pre-call that you need to base your strategies off of not where the customer's at now, but where you think you can get the customer to.
Exactly.
Right? Because if you're giving your customer a VW experience, but you want them to have a Porsche, you want them to eventually become a Porsche or a Mercedes, you got to give them that experience.
Exactly. And it's hard. It's a hard balance, right? Because we have limited resources. So again, I keep preaching this minimum experience needed. And not a lot of people have quite flipped that script. Not every customer wants or needs a white glove experience to be successful within your product. I use probably 10 tech tools a day. If I was getting a white glove experience from every one of those, and maybe I use more like 20 if I'm being real, but if I was getting a white glove experience from every one of those tools, it would make me crazy.
It would drive me nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want things to work, and I want to be able to achieve my outcomes on my own. Now, I do have some tools where I do need that white glove experience, that partnership. So you have to figure out where your customer base falls on that spectrum with the tools and service that you offer, and then map out the minimum experience needed and then back in from there.
Jen, what do you got to say about this?
Yeah, I think we all fall into that trap, and it's of prioritizing the highest ACV customers to the highest level of effort we want to put in. And I don't think it's just CSMs, right? We see senior leadership, those are the accounts they care most about. And so I think, being able to prioritize your accounts based on growth opportunity is critical. But, I don't think we can have this conversation about how to prioritize accounts before we think about teaching CSMs how to prioritize their time, especially in the climate that we're in today. I mean, raise your hand for everybody on the call today if you have too much to do. We're all bogged down and trying to, figure out like how to do 5 million things in the short amount of time we have to do them. And so the first step is really looking like holistically at your to-do list. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been telling my CSMs, you have to say no to things, but not really giving much guidance on how that works and what to say no to, because it's obvious they're not going to go to the DIY quilting, meeting that happens before prioritizing customers. That's obvious. But what about if your CEO asks you to do something? Or if somebody from the product organization comes in and says, I've been working on this project for 5 months and I need you to participate in order to, there's dependencies on how I get my job done. So I think, if we had enough space to do the strategy work to focus on retention, it opens up so much room to be thoughtful in how and who we prioritize our efforts. But first, we have to help each other, create that space in order to be able to put the focus on it.
I agree with you, Jen, so much. Like I feel like I have a little bobblehead back here of myself. I should just hit the head. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I also think, and this has been a problem for many years, that CS has become a bit of a dumping ground in organizations, to where they're not just the CS people, they're the everything people. And that is now becoming even more and more apparent as we're, asking folks again to do more with less resources. So I think that's going to also come to a head. That has to stop. They cannot be the dumping ground and be able to, do their jobs effectively.
I think that, this climate that we're in, the landscape is there's a lot of pressure, and there's more pressure than there was, say, 2 years ago. And I think if we were able to sort of juggle all of those balls 2 years ago, it's impossible to do today. So we're having to make really difficult decisions in what we actually do and what we don't do. And unfortunately, it means some difficult conversations, I think, and some difficult decisions. And that's the way that we create that space to prioritize strategy.
100%. No more Band-Aiding, right? We've been putting Band-Aids on stuff for way too long, and now it's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Lorenzo, you got anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that. To the previous point that we need to learn how to say no, I got, I suppose, a different perspective here. I think we need to learn to say yes, and we got a growing bag of tools at our disposals. We might be able to do more with less. Just think about the ability to deliver automation at scale. I'm sure everyone is dabbling with some level of artificial intelligence. Vendors are getting smarter. So I try not to say no just for a starter. I should say yes, and. So what I'm trying to get with that is that can we create a white glove type of experience, back to Miranda's point, for more customers without having to raise our cost base? And the answer is we're getting better at that. We're getting much better at that. And this is something we're actively exploring. So I think there's something changing the way we operate. It's also changing the customer expectations and bumping them up. So as soon as everyone gets what used to be the white glove, so that's the new baseline. So you need to come up with something better. And that leads into my second point, which is, do we really need to segment customers against current spend or ARR? No, we understand it's limiting. So we go into customer propensity to grow, growth effort score, whatever you measure, like how fast they can grow, how painful it's going to be to grow, how much effort you put into it. But the one thing I'm trying to focus on more and more is how much can I delegate the growth journey to the customer themselves? Is there a dimension that talks about the self-nurturing ability of the customer? Because you're going to have a very good customer that's got a lot of propensity to grow, and he sucks up all your resources. And back to Jen's point, you've got to say no elsewhere. Is that the best way to do it? Is there a way where you can get customers to select what they want to do next, execute, and you become an orchestrator that leaves them run because they got enough resources and guardrails and guidance to fly with that? And my final point is why you want to do it is that I see my, when I'm managing a team, I think about a customer base on the 3 horizons model. So what can we do now what we need to work in the midterm and what we need to do long term. And I try to push most of the customer conversation into today, but really to set them up on a independence journey for the midterm so that my team can focus on the long-term stuff. And we're always working strategically, both with our customers and internally, because if we get stuck into getting things done today, you get overwhelmed really quickly. And that's why I'm such a, I think the yes and type of answer is actually a polite way to delegate and say that, yes, it can be done. It's just not by us or not right now.
I like the yes and, because that's positive. I sometimes typically default to the no but, right? No, but here's what we can do. But what I'm hearing here, and it's interesting, we talk about retention. I think a bunch of people showed up thinking, okay, well, let's talk about strategies for retention, but this theme of time, right? In order for us to effectively retain our customers, we've got to have time, right? We've got to free up the time. And we do that by getting creative, by leveraging AI tools to do analysis and automate things, right? Because anything that we can do to take those manual efforts, what can sometimes be complex analysis off the plates of our customer-facing folks, it frees them up to be more strategic.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I think we're going to see a huge growth over the next year or two, and probably it's already started last year, of leaders now realizing that we have to start looking at what's available to us from like an AI perspective or other tools that are coming out, just to help take off things that don't require critical thinking from our teams. I don't want my team sending a link to a help center article. I don't want my team having to do things that should fall either into a support realm or into, something that could be self-service.
I want some automated drip campaign.
Right. Yeah. An automated drip campaign. I want them being able to have the brain space, the mental space to pause and strategically look at their account base and figure out what next. What are the goals that we're going to surface together? What are the problems we're going to solve? What are the use cases that they're not quite tapping into yet that they should be? How do I get not just, wider, but higher in the organization? How do I make sure I have, multiple budget holders in an organization? So if one area loses their budget, the whole account doesn't get wiped out, right? Like that's the stuff I want them thinking about. I don't want them thinking about, why can Bob not log in?
And you've got to give people that headspace, like you said. You got to give them the headspace to be able to consider those things, to think about those things. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a top tier platinum customer or you got a low tier bronze customer. We should be looking for ways to automate stuff to your point, Lorenzo, to kind of push them to self-serve as much as possible. Anything that's some sort of repetitive thing that we do for every customer, it doesn't matter whether you have a white glove version of it. If you can automate it, automate it.
And also, it talks about the fact that at the lower level, if you're trying to expand horizontally, you can get away with a conversation that's very feature-driven. You talk about your platform, you talk about your standard playbook and the likes. But as you climb up to decision makers, and Miranda, I love your idea of multiple budget holders or multiple failure points. You need to move away from the specificity of your solution, and you really need to turn into an industry expert. If you're supporting healthcare, you need to be aware of what's happening in healthcare. And what we call a strategic direction actually come very far away in legislation. You need to be able to talk about it because it's the only way for you to be relevant at the table where you're trying to bring a solution that's innovative, that's sustainable, that's relevant, and that gets the attention that you need.
Yeah, I think it's utilizing the tools you have. I recognize that, each CSM organization is at a different sophistication level, different growth level. And, if you're lucky enough to have, a CS operations team or an education and training team, to utilize them to create on-demand training so that, your customers have a place to go and get that information and you can train them to go every time, or, a community where they can ask each other and you sort of foster that type of forum where customers and partners can answer their own questions for each other. But I also recognize that some CS teams are bare bones and they don't have some place to put that, right? So then you have to get really creative on how to be able to not answer those easy questions for how to, if you can't log in, without having the support of systems and teaming in place to help manage it.
Yeah, I usually specialize in early to mid-stage startups. The one I'm at right now is a Series B, but I've started as early as like around 30 people, $3 or $4 million in revenue at most organizations, which means I usually have a team of generalists when I'm starting, and then I have to move them up the maturity model to become, a little more specialized. So what you just said, Jen, just really touches my heart because that's where I play. And you're spot on.
Now, all of this stuff that we talk about is like, nirvana end state. But while we're trying to achieve that, right, we have to deal with the fact that there are customers at risk. And so what I'm wondering is, how are you using data to inform kind of what kind of data-driven insights do you find most useful in predicting or preventing churn, and how do you leverage that type of information to make some decisions about your retention strategies? Because once again, we got to move to this ideal situation, but it's like trying to change the engine on a plane while it's in flight, right? We still need to we got to get to that point, but we still got to figure out how to keep everything together while we're on our way. And by the way, just a reminder, folks, you can ask. This would be a good time to ask questions. We'll get to questions here in a few minutes. So your thoughts on that? When
I was at HelloSign, which was a very different model than when I was at Swiftly for 4 years as their chief customer officer, and where I am now, Data Assembly. HelloSign, we had like tens and tens and tens of thousands of customers or monthly active users. So my strategy was very different there because the price point went from free to, thousands of dollars a month. And there I was definitely heavily focused on usage, logins, how many signatures requests have been sent, API calls if they were on the API product. That was a really good barometer of health. It was very simple. You could, segment based on the persona. Like somebody in HR is probably at a, high growth tech startup is probably sending way more signature requests than somebody who's, in a different department at a different type of company. But you could really like get it down to the science there if you spend enough time on it. Now, at a company like where I'm at now and Swiftly, it's a little harder, I'm going to say, usage is important, but we also have data feeds where folks ingest our data directly into their own BI tools, so we can't really see the usage. So for me, a couple of things that is front and center for measuring health, it's very simple. Are they engaging with us? Are they creating goals with us? Are they participating in those goals? And are we hitting ROI with them? And they know we're hitting ROI. Do they know it? It's not enough for us to say, yep, checkbox, check, checkity, check. Nope, they have to know too that they're getting that ROI, and then they're participating in creating the next round of goals. So it's not as scientific, but it works. I did it at Swiftly, and at Swiftly, our net retention and our gross renewal were through the roof. It took us years to, quite a few years to get it there, but it was the same type of motion.
That last thing you mentioned, it's not just good enough that they're getting ROI, but do they know they're getting the ROI? That's huge.
Yes.
Yes. I think.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, we have to think about the maturity level of the CSM organization because, in a perfect world, we'd have customer health scores and risk indicators in a system like Gainsight, for example, that will predict or tell us, to be aware of risks. But I think a lot of CSM organizations that I've been a part of just aren't that sophisticated yet. And so we're relying on people's sort of anecdotal feelings about how they feel about the account. Do I think there's a risk here? I want to call out, I have a senior manager on my team named Paris Good, who developed a risk framework where there's all of these check marks on identifying risk. But the takeaway I have that I think is the most important is she asks her CSMs to ask the customer if they're getting value. And so there's a team call where they review this information. And one of the questions is, did the customer confirm that they're getting value? Which is like such a basic thing, but it's
totally.
so, right? Like, how come I never thought about doing that before? It's brilliant. But I mean, and now we're in the next phase. She's been doing this long enough. We're in the next phase of, we've asked that question, and what does the value mean? How do we measure it? Like, we're moving up the stack with maturity on how we define all of this. But yeah, I mean, simple question is asking the customer, are you getting value?
Right. Lorenzo, what do you are you using data-driven insights at Dynatrace?
Yeah. I think you can get the data to tell you whatever you like if you touch them for long enough. So there's a bit of a risk there, right? You can have massive data ingestion, you can have powerful Power BI type of visualization. Problem is, there's a bit of a data overload. So you can get whatever answer you're actually looking for. And there's a bit of a risk because you're kind of reinforcing your narrative, but not validating the reality. So we tried a few things here where I am now. In a previous company, it was much larger, like a multinational type of environment where we were measuring literally everything. We had a full-time team of data scientists. And paradoxically, it didn't make our life easier. It just make our mistakes more sophisticated. So I think we need to take a step back and really ask, how can we bring this all together? So we got data, we want to have a strategic engagement, we want to demonstrate value with ROI. And what we try to converge on at this point in time is we need success stories. We'd have ROI that built together collaboratively with customers. And that means that, first of all, we need to agree on success plays that get measured and customers see the ROI and they acknowledge that that specific measure is relevant for what they want to do. Also, we need to understand and we make sure how that relates to the wider business. Again, I work in an IT type of environment. It's so cool until you talk to the IT stack. Do we have the right, did we have a presence to sit at the table in front of a board of directors and say, that's what we're doing for the business. Forget about IT. We're part of the wider transformation here. Not obvious. There's a different set of ROIs and a totally different mindset. So that's what the full success stories brings together. A full narrative that cuts through departments, that cuts through business transformation processes, might be a vertical specific, whatever, that you get the attention of your audience and there you can ground yourself in data and you say, the reason why I'm saying this is because I can demonstrate on these indicators that say what I'm doing for you. Therefore, I have the right to ask for more, keep climbing, moving into a new project, a new division, whatever the long-term play is. But if a customer is not able to tell the story of why you're working together, you might have a gap. Even if you got amazing data, you might not have planned the narrative. And that's a big risk for me.
Yeah, that narrative is super important. Success stories are an awesome tool. Whether you're talking about your customer or, in a here's the value that has been created, right? And you're not just, barfing numbers up, right? It's here's a story I'm going to tell you. Or if you're in a position where you're able to upsell them, you're able to increase your footprint by telling a story of a similar situation, telling that story, making it relatable is incredibly powerful. But back to your original comment, I think it was Albert Einstein, or at least it's been attributed to Albert Einstein, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So, you could capture you could have a ton of data, but it's not necessarily, and very much data overload, but it's not necessarily all that valuable, right? There's a step in there where you or a data scientist or somebody needs to take a look at that and figure out, okay, well, what have I got here? What is really something that is going to be meaningful? And most importantly, the data that we have, are there things that we can do that are there actions that we can take based off of what we're discovering in the data? Right? I come from a data background. I spent nearly half a decade at Business Objects working with enterprise customers on things like executive dashboards, and I found myself time and time again going into some of the largest companies, on the Fortune 100, and just poo-pooing their proposed executive dashboards because they were throwing data up that was like, they were all vanity metrics. I'm like, what are you going to do when this metric turns red? Right? That was the typical question I would ask them. When this metric that you've got here, when it goes to red, who are you going to call? Because if you don't have an action that you can take, then this information is purely for your own vanity. It is not going to provide you anything meaningful. Right? You need metrics that allow you to take some action, or at least give you some guidance on where the problem is.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Andrew, because one of the things that I keep thinking about in my head is the executive business review motion. And I know that Aaron and I have gone back and forth. Aaron from Success Coaching and I have gone back and forth about QBRs are garbage and all of that. But I'm a big fan of the executive business review as a moment in time. And if they're done well, they're very powerful as a moment in time to really showcase the partnership. And the entire flow that I use is very simple and very impactful. You start out, of course, just sharing a little bit about the partnership, the problems that you're solving, the goals that have been identified, where you're at, the ROI that has been achieved on their part, right? You get quotes, internal quotes from the key players within the organization saying, this tool saved me X amount of hours, X amount of dollars. We're managed to now expand with our customers, right? And then the key magical thing is having a really solid maturity matrix that you can put up in front of your customers to show them, like, we are the experts here. We talk to a lot of other customers just like you. And this is, where you are in the maturity matrix. These are the use cases. And take them along that journey of, this is where we want to work with you next. Right? And you show them the use cases and problem statements that you could solve together. Then you open it up for them to tell you their goals for the next 6 months, and you do it all over again. You bring those goals back, right? And I can't tell you how powerful it is, but it has to be a very good, solid story. It does have to be centered in data, but it can't be about the data. It's not about the data. It's about them, making them look like rock stars and showing them the strength of the partnership. Exactly.
I love that. It's about them.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember sitting down with when we were doing consulting work, sitting down with a customer who was saying our business reviews are falling flat. And I said, okay, well, take me through one of your business reviews. It was like 20 slides and the first 10 slides were about the vendor. And I'm like,
yeah.
I said, first of all, it shouldn't be 20 slides. Second of all, stop talking about yourself. This isn't about you. This is about the customer.
Yep. And if you feel so compelled to send the information, sometimes you do get folks in the room who are really hungry for data, send a pre-read. That is an underutilized tool for on-sites and executive meetings. It's like, somebody might want to read it. Maybe you feel compelled to send it. Great. Put it in a pre-read, send it beforehand, reference it at the beginning if you need to, but don't waste time running through data without a story.
No.
Exactly.
And if you want to put one catchy figure, I would not go with any of the ROIs. They can be argued against and everything. Goes for the cost of doing nothing. It's more controversial, it's more fun, and impacts a lot of assumptions. You're going for an executive, say, if you do nothing, that's how much you're losing per day, or how much this is costing you.
Right.
And usually you get, you got my attention. Why are you saying that? When you're trying to tell me what you've done for me already. Say, well, because you get the appendix, you can read it. Your job is intrinsically bringing risk profile for your organization down, keep on delivering value and doing more or less. Let me tell you, I got a story for you.
Right. Exactly.
I love that, Lorenzo.
Yeah.
That's clever. That's really clever.
And the other thing is that you're not teaching executives, because they don't like to be told by vendors what they should run the business like. But you're not doing that. You're not specifically talking about you. You're just throwing a hook, and usually opens up for interesting conversations and elevates you to almost be able to hold the mirror to the face and say, that's what you see. That's what we see. are the two aligned, or are we delivering value to you, or do you know what's happening in your business? Because sometimes that's the other thing. I was in QBR or EBRs, whatever you call them, when executives is like, oh, is it the way we run? While we are making this process most efficient, this process should not be in the first instance. Something that I thought we got rid of.
Yeah.
So yes,
I love the fact though that they're, in that situation, they're actually engaging with you, right? And that in itself is incredibly valuable. And if they're intrigued, that's also plays well into your ability to get them to show up the next time around, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this person challenged us, and they had an intriguing talk track and intriguing stories, and I want to show up the next time as well. Let's how about we get to some questions? We've got about a dozen in them, and it's about quarter till the hour. Just a reminder, we go until quarter past the hour. And for those of you that do need to leave us at the top of the hour, our recording will be available sometime next week, along with the transcript. But if you can stick around, we will answer questions as long as we can. And by the way, if you see a question in that list and you want to upvote it, right, please upvote it. So our first question comes from anonymous attendee. Anonymous asks, there's Anonymous shows up every one of these things. Anonymous asks, what are some of the best retention practices that you all have seen? And it looks like Miranda wants to jump in on this one first. Miranda, what have you got to say to anonymous attendee?
Anonymous attendee, that is a great question. The best retention practices I've seen is having a strong product strategy. I know that may feel like a little bit out of, the control of CS, but that's why I think it's incredibly important that when you are picking where you work, you are really vetting out, like, how do you decide what lands on the product roadmap? How do you decide what gets deprioritized? What was included in the past couple of releases, right? Really understand when customers churn, what are the top reasons for churn? What are the problem statements? Have the best strategy for retention is heavily centered around your product. You can't customer success your way out of a garbage product.
Amen.
Hey, the crowd likes that.
It's
true
true.
though. It is true, right? There's only so many band-aids that we can put on bad product, right?
100%.
Yeah, before you turn into the
Lorenzo, go ahead.
Organization. Yeah, to Miranda's point, and the proxy for knowing if your product is not as good is that if you start being the dumping ground for anything customer, you got a problem.
Yeah.
If you're doing a bit of support and a bit of product management and a bit of customer success, and sometimes you're doing a bit of sales, look, your product might have some limitations that are worth talking about.
Jen, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I keep coming back to the value conversation here because it's like, how can you retain customers if they're not getting value? And actually something I've been thinking about recently is that not all value is created equal. So we talked about, Miranda used the point, like, user logins, like basically, are they using the data checkbox? That's one level of data. And then you've got soft or one level of value. Then you've got soft value, which is like, are you saving your customers time? Like, are they spending less time doing X, Y, Z, so that they can do, better work on their side? And then you've got hard value, which is like, are they saving money or making money in the best cases? And I guess my point is we get stuck focusing sometimes on the first level of value and the check boxes. And our eyes are on the prize in the far end of like, we need ROI to prove, to get retention. But don't forget about that middle layer, right? There's a lot of times sneaky little metrics hidden in the middle of people saving time and ultimately saving the company money because of your product or because of the work that you're doing.
I agree with all of you, but I disagree as well, because I think there's one piece of all of that that everybody's missing. And actually, Miranda mentioned earlier, it's not good enough just to achieve it. You have to make sure that the customer understands the value that they've achieved. So for me, one of the best retention practices is making sure that your customer understands, and not just the end user, but the key stakeholders understand the value, right? Because it's not good enough. Yeah, let's say you're following all of our best practices that we teach in building success plans and defining quantifiable outcomes, and you've sat there and you say, okay, hey, we're going to increase efficiency by X%, and we're going to increase your revenue by this dollar amount. So very specific measures. But you know what? At the end of the day, if the key stakeholder who's going to make a decision whether to keep you as a vendor or not doesn't understand the value that's been created, even if you've created the value, then you have a potential churn.
If you create a lot of value at the periphery, create innovation, just not a core of the business. So, I mean, nice to have.
Yeah. Awesome. Miranda, if you would hit done button there, we'll go on to the next question.
Sure.
Our next question comes from RKLI. Okay, this next person. And let's see here. What are your favorite AI tools, and what AI automations have you found to make the largest impact to your team? Anybody that far enough along in AI?
I'm not. I wish I was, but I just joined this company, 7-8 months ago, and I've been really focused on getting some of the basics down before I start bringing in that next level. Now it is on my radar, and it is something that I want to start looking at maybe Q3. So all those AI vendors out there listening, I know, I hear you, I see you. Thank you for your messages on LinkedIn. Q3 will be your time. So
I think you can use tools like ChatGPT or Anthropic to help you develop emails.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing stuff like that. We're doing stuff like that already. I want to go. Yeah. I want to do like next level stuff.
Oh yeah. But there's the question. Like, to your point, there's a lot of next level stuff out there, and it's honestly it's still being baked. It's not done yet. And
I don't think AI for success paradigm has emerged yet. What we see is that a lot of our vendors are building AI in the tool. So someone is kind of doing the minutes for you. Someone is doing a segmentation, let's be clever. Someone is doing some support flow that gets automated, some sentiment analysis. But I don't think we have, as a business overall, not just my business, as a CS team worldwide, I don't think we have one clear winner here or a shared model. It's something that, to Miranda's point, everyone is dabbling with. I haven't seen a very mature framework that say, yes, that's the way we're going to move forward with.
The same, Lorenzo. And the thing too right now is I'm trying to not get distracted by it. I know I need it. I know I need to go out and figure it out. But right now, it just feels like it sits. So I use OKRs for all my planning, and I have like a parking lot. It sits in my parking lot, my personal parking lot of figure out our AI strategy.
I got to tell you, one tool that we do use that is incredibly helpful, and just as a side note, we do have done some advising to the leadership there, is the update.ai product. It does a phenomenal job. It allows us, it's one of these tools that records or takes your Zoom recordings and then summarizes them and points out specific things that it interpreted in the conversation. It allows us to, and we record all of our meetings, purely so that we can focus on the individuals that we're speaking with, and update.ai does an amazing job summarizing that meeting, basically creating meeting notes for us. It's a great tool. So I would check that out if you're looking for something to help you really keep focus on your customer when you're talking to them.
Yeah. One thing I'm really hoping to get to personally is that I didn't mention this before, but my customer base speaks some 35 different languages, and English is not always the preferred one. So that's sometimes it's hard to land the message properly. And I'm starting to see vendors that do specialize in this. It's just not a translator, but it's a translator that understand the context of the communication, understand the tone that you want to set. So far, they are fun more than useful, but yeah, I'm sure they will get better with time.
Now that's a challenge, and we talked about this briefly during our pre-call. That's a challenge for companies that go global. Is it's not good enough just to speak the language. You need to understand how they do business in those different areas. The way we do business here in the States is very different than the way that they do business in Europe and even down, or in APAC, even down to the different countries. But
I would even say the way we do business in the States is different in the regions in the States.
East Coast versus West Coast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's a separate webinar. I think we could spend an entire webinar talking just about that. But awesome. Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Sydney out of Washington, D.C., apparently. Sydney asks, we've recently implemented a digital touch program for lower ARR clients. Some of those clients had a CSM and now they don't, which I feel a tinge of guilt about, despite not having the time and space available for it. I've heard similar situations before as well. Any words of wisdom about running a digital touch program efficiently, and perhaps thoughts about client transitions to a digital touch program? And looks like, Jen, you wanted to jump in on this. So turn on that empathy, Jen, and share what you got for Sydney.
I mean, my guess is, Sydney, if this is a model shift that you've implemented recently, it probably is driven by the economic climate that we're in, and, fewer resources and a laser focus on how your company makes money. And especially, typically we see a lot of churn within the long tail. And so, yes, I understand, especially when we typically hire CSMs, typically are land more on the empathetic side. But I think if you think about the way that you're going to spend your time, you're either going to spend it on the big customers where there's going to be high impact, or you're going to spend it on the lower customers. So if you have to make that separation in your head, the obvious choice is you're going to focus on the customers where there's more growth and a higher ACV. I think also, in terms of scalability, that's where you have to rely on, community and on-demand training and really letting the customer know how to help themselves. And guess what? Some of them are going to churn and they're not going to have a good experience. And it's a hard decision to make. But I think as a company, you have to stand by that and say, like, we are making this, this decision to put our energy and our resources into a different customer set.
Which is a tough thing to do for all these people in customer success that are filled with high EQ and they want to help. But Miranda, when you put on your CFO hat, you're like, there's that. I want to be empathetic and I want to help everybody. But at the end of the day, this customer, we got to divorce them because they're it
happens all the time. Right? Like I have been the person to actually sit with the expenses and go line by line by line by line by line and figure out what the hell we're going to cut because we can't afford this, right? I do want to call out, though, that the whole digital touch program, the biggest misconception and I see again and again is that it's just for folks that aren't paying a lot of money. You can experiment with some of the folks that are making a smaller investment to see what takes. But you should be having a digital touch program for your entire portfolio. And what you learn there can be applicable to even the customers that are paying you, upwards of whatever your top amount is. So don't think of it as in, I'm just going to plop these low investment customers into this bucket and, let the digital world take care of them. Because what you're learning there can be applicable and help you save time and manpower elsewhere or bandwidth. There's one more call out, though. I did something incredibly controversial, and this is years and years and years ago. At one company where we did have a free offering, my team was being cannibalized by the free customers, absolutely cannibalized, like phone calls, emails. I actually took our phone number off Google. I delisted our phone number. Then if you paid a certain tier, you would get a phone number, and everyone else was directed to support with certain SLAs that we could afford, and also help center. And interestingly enough, it didn't increase churn. It actually helped with the customers that were paying us. They had more access to my support team, because we weren't being cannibalized by free users. Now, did it hurt the conversion from free to premium? A little bit. But it wasn't so much so that it didn't net itself out in the end.
I think you can also use CSM as like a sales value proposition, like, your opportunity to give your sales organization, like, what is the value that a CSM brings to the table, right? And then maybe you have the upsell opportunity. A customer's paying X amount of dollars, and you say, if you were to pay X amount more, you'd also get, an assigned CSM that can help you with all these different value points that can help you grow your business.
Yeah.
That's an option as well.
Yeah, and the ability we have to deliver meaningful digital first interactions is getting much better with time. I don't think this is going to be you don't pay us enough or you're not important enough, therefore you get digital. It's actually going to be just a new channel. In fact, sometimes it's the most efficient way to get things done. And customers are learning about it. And I had customers like, look, you know what? I'd rather deal with you on some sort of a chat interface than with your people. As long as the chat is quality stuff that comes through, that's all I need. It's more efficient. I can do languages. I can do my own time. It just works for me.
Great point.
Awesome. Hey, Jen, can you hit the done button for me for Sydney?
Yes.
We got people dropping off because it's the top of the hour, but we still got a good 120 people there. So let's keep going here. We got another 15 minutes. So, Anonymous again, I know it's not the same Anonymous probably, asks, what are your suggestions for those of us who work at a small company where the company will not pay for a CS tool? How can we use the minimal data we have to drive results? And Lorenzo, you wanted to jump in on this one, so go for it, man.
Yeah. A couple of companies ago, I was in a startup type of environment, like B-series, strapped for cash and all the beautiful things that you get at that stage. What I've learned over time going up into larger companies, do not think that your tool is going to solve the retention issue for you. You're just going to have a different perspective on things, but don't think that a sophisticated tool is going to fix it off just for you. What I did back in the day, and I think what's still kind of the right approach, think about this backwards. Start with customers that you're losing and start trying to find similarities and patterns in what is driving them away from you. And sure enough, as you get to a deeper and deeper analysis, you actually interview them, you will find reasons why they're leaving you. That would be the design principles for what to build your success motion on. So try and risk minimize and design away those reasons why customers left you in the first instance. As you do this, you will learn more about your existing customers and you will learn how to design for the future. Look, the tool might or might not be helpful. Some of the tools are just an admin overlay, so they kind of drives the interaction for you. So instead of tracking answers on a spreadsheet, you've got a tool that calls them a timeline or interaction points or whatever. Is it really transforming the way that you think about the whole success motion? It is not. Sometimes what you need is not a success tool per se. It might be a value capture, value realization, or stakeholder mapping, the sort of stuff that you get in sales. Maybe that's what you need at that level of complexity, more so than something that keeps tab on your admin tasks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lorenzo. I can't tell you, I do consulting on the side as well. I can't tell you how many times I go into some of these early stage startups and they buy these massive tools thinking they're going to solve everything. It's going to fix it. It's going to, it's going to get everybody doing the right thing at the right time, and it's going to reduce our churn. And it's like, it's like the savior has come. Like we got the CS tool. And then what happens is they notice a few months later that it didn't do that, because there's something bigger broken. I am a big fan of having a CS tool. I do think it can be incredibly helpful and valuable once you know why you really need it. Once you know what problems you're looking to solve for. I mean, it's kind of like reverse engineering, like we do for our customers. Just do it for your internal like tool needs, right? So we're trying to figure out what are our use cases, our problem statements we want to solve for. Is this going to actually get us there? It's the same idea that as a CSM that you do with your customers, you just do it internally to see if you need it. Now, having being at a smaller company where you have folks who they won't pay for a CS tool, I really think you have to center having that conversation around the value. So if you're going to invest, 30, 40K into a CS tool, you need to show the decision makers how it's going to print $80,000, right? That changes the conversation a little bit. Don't give up, but definitely figure out how you're positioning that around ROI.
ROI. Wait a minute. You mean our leaders want to hear about ROI, not just our customers?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's an internal thing. When we're looking at budget, we want to know if we're spending $1, how much are we going to get out of the dollar? And, apparently they must not see the value in it, or quite frankly, maybe it's just budget constraints, which everybody's going through right now. And the idea of signing another long-term contract and having another expense to add just terrifies finance folks right now.
Yeah, I have a few experiences myself as a consultant walking into situations where, they implemented a CS tool. We don't have to get into specifics of which tools. They implemented a CS tool and it wasn't working. And I said, well, let's talk about your customer journey. And they just look at me like deer in headlights. What's that? Yeah. Like, well, okay, so how can you have a tool if you don't even know what it is we're trying to do? Right. So let's take a step back and start there. Right. Let's take a step back and figure out what you're trying to achieve before we start trying to instrument it. So.
Right. And Gary is spot on in the chat. It says it's not just the CS tool, it's the people to make it produce.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think for the anonymous attendee who asked the question, if you're really interested in understanding like what type of metrics or categories a CS tool can help you with, like get a demo of one of the companies or talk to someone else in the industry who utilizes the tool well. And maybe there is something that you can take away from that your team can do manually or start building and growing, to measure that without the tool itself.
Yeah, you want to start without the tool for sure. I mean, what you want to do is you really want to take inventory, right? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And there's some great tools out there. There's a number of competitors, but quite frankly, there are some tools that are stronger at some things and some tools that are stronger at other things. And so in order for you to do a quality assessment of that, you need to understand what it is where you're trying to get to, right? It's you think about it, you need to do the same analysis that we're helping our customers do. What are you trying to achieve? What value are you trying to get out of this, right? And those situations where you are banging your head against the wall because your customer can't articulate what it is they're trying to achieve, remember that, okay? Right? And the reason why you need to figure it out for yourself first before you start going out and thinking that a tool is going to be a silver bullet. The next tab. We got another 7 minutes. We've only been through 4 questions. There you go. This is how it always happens this way. All right. Our next question comes from Keely. Keely, hopefully you're still here. Thank you for the question. Keely says, there's so much I'm hearing in this session today that makes 100% sense. I think from the perspective of the individual CSM and even from some levels of management, there is 100% buy-in on these ideas and the shifts needed to ensure efficacy. But I'm wondering what suggestions you have for increasing buy-in for these kinds of shifts at the executive levels of leadership.
Yeah. Did you want to answer it, Andrew?
Go for it.
Okay.
I know you've been knee deep in this stuff.
It's like bananas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Keely, what I would say to you and to every CSM out there is really get a strong understanding of what the executives have to prioritize per the request of their CEO or their board, because that will drive so much of where their mindset is. So, for example, right now, for the first time ever, many companies at the board meeting are hearing the words profitability being uttered. And it is new for a lot of companies. So that means, every executive is now having to look at everything they do through the lens of, does this help me or does this help my company, my team, my customers, while getting the company to profitability? So I would just suggest that if your manager or director, or depending on how many layers there are, aren't in tune with what the directive of the board currently is, I would ask. Don't be afraid. Just say, hey, I'm paying attention to what's going on in the tech world, and I understand there's a lot of pressure happening right now on money. What is our board saying about these things? Are they talking about profitability? Are they talking about expense cuts? Like, just ask, what's the worst that can happen? They tell you they don't know. But if they do share with you, it can really help everyone. And I highly suggest, if there are any executives in here, you are sharing with your teams what you're hearing from the board and the directives. Don't create fear, don't create panic, but you work with a group of adults. And I believe in teaching everybody, or treating everybody like they're adults, and then teaching them about what these things mean and what it means for all of us. That's how I would approach shifting mindsets, is getting in from that level.
Yeah. Again, back to another company I used to work for, a bit smaller, but what we did then is that we were trying to figure out what was the best way to engage with executives. We ran QBRs that were kind of falling flat a bit. One of my team members had a good idea, and she said, why don't we try run this with our executives in our business? And so we went to our product VPs and CIO and the likes, and we said, look, we want to go to customers with this one, but we're not sure we're pitching correctly. Can you play the customer for us? Let's role play this. And that did two things for us. First of all, we got amazing feedback because they kind of were the persona we were targeting, so they help us a lot with getting better at delivering. But the other thing they did is that for the first time, they came to us and they say, you know what, we never realized that our CS motion in this business was so sophisticated. So it raised our profile internally. And that opened up the conversation to say, lovely, if we open the door with this executive, would you be open to an exec-to-exec type of connection? Let's move it on from this, we delivering success, get them to talk to our decision makers. And it was a resounding success. So if you have an opportunity to
strategy.
Build networks like that, try it out. It's really rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, great points by both of you so far. Another little one is sometimes it has to do with visibility. Like, executives are so busy doing what they're doing that they may not know that you're doing great work. And so, challenge yourself to be bold and get a one-on-one on the calendar with your CEO. I mean, come prepared to it. Don't just show up, but take that bold move. Also, you can ask to present at your company all hands on a success story. Like, if your company is not highlighting the work that customer success is doing, then don't wait for them to ask you. Ask them and see if you can present on it.
I love, love, love that. What I do is I put out a monthly CS dashboard that highlights statistics, things that are happening, initiatives, executive business reviews that we have coming up. And I send it out to the entire company once a month. And I've also created like a CS Pulse channel in Slack, to where every customer update is fed into Slack, and it's a mandatory channel for everyone in the company.
Also, metrics, can't stress this enough. Like, if you're telling a story, like, please put numbers and metrics in there to help tell your story, because it makes it so much more impactful.
Yeah. Metrics, data. Take the feelings out of it. Stick to the facts.
I say put feelings in it too. I am all about that. Like, you can add
depends what story you're telling.
EQ and IQ, right? Like,
I mean, it depends on what story you're doing. You put feelings in it when you're talking about a customer, but I mean, if you're when I'm trying to convince my CEO and my CFO to make an investment, I like sticking to the facts. This isn't my subjective opinion. This is my objective opinion based on this set of data. So we're both right. Keely, thanks for the question.
So you had to have the last word there, Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's my show, so there. All right, and I think we're on to our last. Oh man, I don't know if we have enough time to get through this question. Let's try. Nathan, thank you for the question. Nathan asks, what's your strategy in thinking about client retention for customers who have all signs trending positive, usage, verbal feedback, engagement, but that are still at risk of churn due to new leadership coming in, executive pushback? Do you have preferred strategies for having CSMs initially connect and present value to the new stakeholders, or for bringing in other team members like founders, account managers, sales leaders for supporting those new relationships? So real quick, what have you, Miranda, what do you got?
I'm living through this right.
She's
No.
she's frozen.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
sorry?
So intense, the intense the sentiment is.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay, sorry, you froze on us for a second.
Did I freeze? Oh,
You
wow.
totally froze.
No. Really quickly, I've lived through this quite a few times, but I'm going through it right.
She froze
I'm
again.
executive.
Sorry, you keep freezing on us right when you're about to say something, like right now. She froze again.
I really want to hear what she's going to say too.
I know. I'm like, okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Yeah.
Maybe Muggsy or Bitsy or whatever the other does.
Can you turn off your camera?
It's Muggsy. Muggsy, not Bitsy.
What's the other dog's name?
Ruby.
Ruby. We were wondering if Ruby was biting through your Ethernet cable.
I'm directly connected too. I'm not on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So it's probably Xfinity.
Okay, so we all want to know. You froze on us yet again. And there she goes again.
Okay.
I love technology.
Can you turn your video off and try that? Maybe that'll help.
No, don't turn your video.
Oh, don't turn your video off. Sorry.
All right.
How about now? Can you hear me?
All right. So tell us your story.
All right. Really quick. So I'm doing.
This is the push to get people on LinkedIn. She wants to connect with people and then share it on LinkedIn.
It's all part of it. You know what it is? It's Xfinity. It's a story about Xfinity, isn't it?
Yeah. I give up. I'm not going to tell the story. I'm not.
All right. Any Jen, Lorenzo, anything quick on this one for Nathan?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is, we don't always pull executive sponsors in. And like, this could be a case where like, maybe your CEO knows somebody that they can connect with at the company. Of course, now Miranda is like very clear.
Yeah.
Try one more time, Miranda.
You want to try one more time?
Okay. Yes. Let's see. And I'll write a LinkedIn post about this. It's really crucial that you don't ever get single threaded. This is a perfect example of you're single threaded and your budget sits with one sponsor. When they leave, you're in trouble. But if you are single threaded and this happens, you immediately have to get your executives in front of the new executive and make an introduction and have them start building that relationship. It is incredibly crucial. I've done this a few times and do a presentation directly to the new executive, showing them this is what we do, this is how we partner, these are the wins we've had, this is the ROI, like a mini EBR just to the executive, and this is how we're going to make you look like a rock star. Because the key is these are new people within that org. They probably want to figure out how do they get their footing, how do they look like a rock star, and you want to tell them how you're going to help them do that. Very quick, clear, concise, and get that time in front of them. If you have an executive reach out to an executive, they're more likely to reply. I hate that that's true. It just is true. So start tapping into the executive sponsor, or the executive at the customer doesn't know that your executive hasn't been involved in the account up until then. They don't know that. They're new there. So don't even worry about a pre-existing or no pre-existing relationship. Tap into that value.
Another thing that we try to do, if appropriate, don't go in as an individual vendor. Try and take an approach ecosystem and educate the new decision maker from a ecosystem perspective. Say, I work with these other 5 vendors. That's the line of business we impact for you. We really are changing the way you operate. And do you want to get to know each of us a bit closer? I usually see, especially at the beginning, and it sounds more efficient utilization of time, because the executive will like, okay, I'm talking to these 10 vendors in the one immersion day, whatever, and I feel like I'm in control of this new team I'm going to run.
Awesome. All right, Nathan, we were able to get something in there for you. So hopefully that was helpful. Well, we're at the end of our time that we've got for today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, our guests, or Success Coaching. I do want to thank all of our guests for spending time with us today. And the crowd goes wild for your insights, ideas, and best practices that you shared. One final note, great CS leaders know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created the CS Leadership Roundtable, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. Once again, we hope to see you next month on the Leadership Roundtable, where we will be discussing, what are we discussing next month? We are discussing, utilizing performance metrics and KPIs. That should be a intriguing conversation. And that's happening on April 10th. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day. Have a great rest of your week and month, everybody, and we'll see you next time.